What happened on June 21st in 1947 for Maury Island near Vashon? That this gentleman joining us on the line now feels was the beginning of UFO sightings in the United States, that this came before Roswell. And I am just proud as punch and a little flabbergasted to have you on, Steve Edmitson. Thank you. Our lawyer, historian, filmmaker, and foremost expert on Pacific Northwest UFOs. This story, can you walk us through it? I'm sure you've told it a million times, and hopefully every time you do tell it, it makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, because it is remarkable what happened to those gentlemen on that timber salvage boat on a nice day on June 21st, 1947.
Well, hey, thanks for having me on. And you'll find out as we talk. I love this story.
Yes.
And I like the description. It makes the hair stand up, because as someone who's really interested in Northwest history and storytelling, this is one phenomenal story. It's just unbelievable. And people just, I keep telling people when I talk about it, oh, we're not even close to the weird stuff yet. You know,
Okay.
It's just like it just gets crazy. So the basic story, the most basic, UFO story is June 21, 1947, guy named Harold Dahl, resident of Tacoma, goes out on his working boat. They're salvaging lumber logs. He takes his son, Charles, who's, 13, 14, 15 years old, picks up a couple dock workers. We don't know who they are. Takes a family dog.
Sparky.
Sparky, yes.
Yeah.
And they go out. They're about 3 miles out of Tacoma. They're just off Vashon, Maury Island. And the allegation is 6 flying discs, just out of nowhere, 100 feet across, big, scary. One of them they describe it as failing because it's lower than the others. Eventually it ejects or releases chaff and then molten slag. They call it slag, like a molten lava. This is very frightening. It's damaging the boat. It hits the dog Sparky and kills Sparky, which is, when I tell the long version, I'm really working up to that moment.
Okay.
Sparky.
Not Sparky.
The
not
dog.
Sparky, Steve. Not Sparky.
It elicits more emotion than the fact that the son Charles was also burned.
Right, right.
I just find that phenomenal, right?
Yes.
So Charles is burned. They're frightened. They run the boat to the shore. They're so frightened. I mean, this is an interesting sort of fact to me, is because we made a movie about this eventually, and we really were thinking, how scared do you have to be to take an 80-foot working boat, 80 feet, and run it ashore to get out from the stuff that's falling on you, right? According to the story, they scramble off, they hide in some cliffs, and then the UFOs go away. So that's June 21.
Yeah.
That's the story. It gets weird the next day.
It's weirder?
First weird part, yes.
Okay.
Next day, June 22nd, and this is the part as someone who loves the history part and the pop culture part, really, really gets to me. Next day, the story goes, Harold Dahl says he gets a knock on his door around 6:30 in the morning at his house on Gove Street in Tacoma. And there's a man there, and you can imagine what he's dressed like. He's the quintessential black suit, white shirt, black tie, fedora. Actually arrived in a black 1947.
Wait, he's not a Mormon, is he? Is he there trying to get you to read the book or something?
One would wonder,
okay,
right? Because at this point in time, we don't have this idea of a man in black.
Yes,
right. This sort of this Will Smith, Tommy Lee Jones thing. Guy shows up, and the punchline at the door at Harold's house is, "I know what happened to you yesterday on the water, and I need to talk to you about that. We probably shouldn't do it here. Let's go to a diner. Your wife's here. Your burned son is here.
Yeah.
We need to, So they go to a diner in Tacoma. We don't know what diner it is. And at that diner, the story is that this man in black proceeded to tell Harold everything I just told your listeners, the story of what happened to him yesterday on the water. And then he did what we have come to learn that men in black tend to do, issue the warning. And the warning was, you shouldn't talk about anything that happened to you. Bad things will happen to you. Bad things will happen to your business. Bad things will happen to your family. You just need to not talk about it. So we have history's first appearance of a man in black and history's first warning from a man in black, according to our popular culture. This is the one. There was nothing earlier than this. And this has sort of launched the mythologies that we now know as, the Warner Brothers movie franchise. All the X-Files all come from this story. So even if he made it up, good on you, Harold Dahl. We love your story. We've done some good work with it.
So then after Harold Dahl, I guess he doesn't talk about it, but then on June 24th, a pilot is flying. And so this is just a couple of days later, and he's out near Mount Rainier. And what does he see?
Yeah, his name is Kenneth Arnold, and he's real legit. I mean, he's a completely credible human. And he is a pilot, and he sees 9 disc-shaped objects at Mount Rainier. He was flying around Mount Rainier because a lot of pilots were doing it then because they were trying to hunt this. They were trying to find a crashed military aircraft, and they hadn't found it yet on the mountain. And he saw 9 objects. He ended up describing them very meticulously. He did a number of interviews, and that's where the term flying saucer actually came from, because he was describing them to a reporter. The reporter then used the phrase flying saucer in the story because Arnold had described them as skipping like you skip a stone on the water. So that's where we get the story flying saucer. So that's, in a period of 3 days, what I've noticed, because I'm not a ufologist, I don't live with this stuff. What I've noticed is UFO people silo these things. They become interested in the one thing, and they don't kind of take it contextually like a historian might. Like, oh, when was this happening? What else was happening?
Yeah.
Right. So all of a sudden we have all these things happening in a period of 3 days here in, the Pacific Northwest. And what's coming is an entire summer of hysteria, panic, whatever. We have thousands of sightings over the summer of 1947 that follow these events. The most significant of which is just 2 weeks after the stuff we talked about, John, just 2 weeks, the so-called crash in Roswell, New Mexico. So same period of time, if you think about it, we're right in that same window. On July 2nd, there's a crash in Roswell. Nobody knows about that because it doesn't get reported out until July 8th. And July 8th, the military has the bright idea, super bright, right? 9 o'clock in the morning, call a press conference, tell the world you found a crashed UFO. And within 3 hours, they realized what a monumentally dumb idea that was. And they recanted the whole story. And that launches the Roswell mythology. That story, that report to the Roswell Daily Record, and the recanting 3 hours later. And now, we have this great perfect conspiracy theory around Roswell. So we're 2.5 weeks. All this is happening along with thousands of sightings around the country. Really interesting times.
So I also think it's interesting. So Kenneth Arnold calls military intelligence, and a guy named Frank Brown and another guy, William Davidson, comes to interview the pilot, Kenneth Arnold, for the flying saucers that he saw. They collect his testimony and any evidence that he might have. And then those guys get on a B-25 to fly back. And then that plane crashes.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Steve, how do you leave that out?
Well, we didn't make it there because you're talking about the end of the summer. So we have all these sightings, right?
Yeah.
And what's happening is, and you got to get into the larger politics. You've got J. Edgar Hoover's FBI, and he's pulling the strings on UFO investigations all over the country because he's in what would I call it in a polite phrasing? He's in an argument with the Army.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Army wants jurisdiction over these UFO sightings all over the country. And J. Edgar Hoover's FBI, he's the most powerful man in the world, perhaps in 1947.
Sure.
He's not going to give it away. So they're fighting about it. And they're unleashing investigators, both the Army and the FBI, when there's a sighting. And so, yes, they're finally circling around to Maury Island. Right.
Yeah.
Because they have it. They've talked to Ken Arnold, like you said. And they've done that interview. And now they're like, well, we got to investigate this Maury Island thing. That's a weird story. So the two pilots, Brown and Davidson, They go to Tacoma to the Winthrop Hotel. They meet Ken Arnold. He joins them. They meet another one. This is you may not have heard. There's an incident the same period of time, Flight 105. And it was a United Airlines flight, and it was July 4th, and the captain, E.J. Smith, and the crew, they all see two flying disc formations. And so E.J. Smith is also a credible witness, and he joins them. So you just got a party going on, basically, at the Winthrop Hotel. They bring in the Maury Island witnesses. They bring in Harold Dahl. They bring in Fred Chrisman. So you got this big thing going on. They do the interview of Harold Dahl, and this is actually on July 31st. So we've kind of gone to the end of the summer. And we get to a point where they actually take samples of the slag that fell onto Harold's boat.
Yeah. And
they're handed that. The pilots take it. They get back on that B-25 you mentioned, because Uber in 1947, I guess, if you're in the military, take the keys, take the B-25, right? So they get on the plane. They manifest that slag as top secret cargo. And they make it 45 minutes into the flight back down to California. Plane spontaneously, with this alleged UFO cargo, catches fire. And the pilots are able to get two passengers out of the plane safely, but that is too much time. They can't get out. The pilots perish in the crash. So on August 1st, which is the first day that the Army separated from the Air Force, it's Air Force Day, which is why they left in the middle of the night, was to get back to California for all the parties. These are the allegedly first two fatalities in the history of the Air Force. These two pilots that died in this crash investigating a UFO. I think of it as history's first X-file. You basically, and the reason I say that, John, is that the next weird part is the FBI has jurisdiction over this plane crash investigation. And they assign an agent, a special agent out of the Tacoma office. He's our Agent Mulder. And his name is Jack Wilcox. And it's his records that lit my fire as a historian, because he writes down everything. We've got binders of records of Jack Wilcox's investigation describing all of this stuff. I don't think there's a UFO sighting in history with a better record of investigation than Jack Wilcox provided us. And he's reporting directly to J. Edgar Hoover the whole time. Hoover's literally writing teletypes to Wilcox directly, because it turns out Hoover's kind of a weird guy. Yeah. And he had a lot of things going on. And one of them was apparently he loved UFOs. He was personally involved in these investigations. So, it's a great story with lots of tragedy. People died. The dog died. I love it. I can't get enough. We made the movie about it.
Yeah. So, and at the time, so for historians and those, so J. Edgar Hoover they were thinking of cutting part of the budget of the FBI, and he was trying to expand his power and to keep more money, and he wanted to sort of isolate and just become this FBI would become this superpower in the United States, that he didn't even really want he didn't want the president of the United States to have any power over the budget, so that he could just continue to expand what the FBI was going to have over everything in the United States. But for you, it's kind of you're a historian, you're a normal guy living here. Then there's a lot of kooky, crazy people that are, that sort of like mess up the facts of it, right? So you kind of had to push back against sort of the nutty stuff, so that people just go, oh, everybody's all nuts. Like if you looked on Wikipedia, they said the whole thing was a hoax, that it wasn't true, that Dahl didn't see this, I don't know what happened to Sparky. They don't even get into it. They said it's just this dismissive thing, like, the whole thing, everything you see here, there's nothing to see here.
Yeah. I think that is such a good point. First of all, that there's a lot of kooky, crazy stuff.
Yes.
Let's just put a lot of it in that box, right? And every time I see a television show on Discovery Channel or Sci-Fi or something, and the first time someone says, could it be, and then they say something crazy.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I'm done. I'm turning the channel. There's no real investigation going on here, right?
Yeah, right.
So that is going on. But then what happened, this is the historian part. This is the treasure hunt part, right? This is that I was just super annoyed when I first heard this story and got excited about it when I heard the whole hoax that, Harold finally said I made it all up. And I just thought the story is too amazing. Even if it's a hoax, it's a story worth telling. So to get Special Agent Wilcox's records, it's a Freedom of Information Act request, but a lot of those documents are at something called the FBI Vault. It's online, and the reason is the most significant public records request in the history of history for any agency anywhere is UFOs. They're sick of it, and so they try to take that topic and throw it online and answer all the public records requests by saying, go look at the vault.
Okay.
So you can get a lot of this stuff. So I have, Wilcox's file, the memos that he was writing on a daily basis between August 6th and August 27th. That was when he's been charged. He's the Agent Mulder who's been told by Hoover to investigate a B-25 crash with alien artifacts on it, right? It's an X-file.
Yeah.
So he's writing down the interviews. He interviews Dahl several times, et cetera. But here's where we get into the hoax. This is sort of the meat and potatoes. As a lawyer, where I go, everybody's wrong. Everybody's wrong. Because Dahl, by this time, hated being involved in this. That's well documented. Even before the plane crash, he was like, I'm being ridiculed. Bad things are happening. Man in Black said bad things would happen. Bad things are happening. I hate it. I want to get away from it. And the plane crashes, and now he's like mortified.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm now going to say this. I made it all up. Even though it's true, even though it happened, I will tell the world a new fiction. And that is, I made it all up. And this is a quote from the FBI records. Dahl says, I'd rather be known as the biggest liar that ever lived than be a crazy person that says they saw a UFO. Right?
Yeah.
So that's in the record. And J. Edgar Hoover gets involved here in the middle of August. He's been reading these reports. He writes a teletype directly to the field agent, directly to our Agent Mulder. And it says, oh, it looks like he's confessed to a hoax. We can close this case. And on August 14th, this is courage. You get on a teletype and you teletype back to the director of the FBI, maybe the most powerful man in the world, as we talked about at this point, to tell him he's wrong. And he teletypes Hoover 4 words, Dahl did not admit it was a hoax. But he only said he's going to say it was a hoax,
right,
so he can be a liar and not a crazy person. So none of that is known to the public because the whole file is sealed for 50 years as top secret. So the only narrative that goes out into the world is I made it all up, what Harold wanted. But now we know that was never true, or at least it was called into question by the FBI. But boy, I got to tell you, John, I have learned in this process how hard it is to fix a historical narrative gone wrong, because you cannot convince people to take that deep dive and understand what was really happening here.
Right.
And, I think that's unfortunate because it's a great story. And the fact that he felt he had to, that's what's happening right now. If you get involved in UFO world now, you got people that are out there being, witnessing, and you got half the world says you're still a crazy person. And then half the world says we need more information on that. That cycle just never seems to end. So he wanted out. Clearly, Harold Dahl wanted out.
So, because people, they want to get to the end of a story, and then also people basically being lazy. It's like, okay, just what's the end? What's the end? Just tell me how it ends, right? And Harold Dahl, made the whole thing up. Oh, okay, fine, I can move on to something else. Let me ask you, in the time remaining, Steve, and I'll ask you to be sort of I know as a historian, you're basic on facts and actions and reading record, but let's just sort of use our imagination for a moment. What if all of this is true? Then what does it do to the structure of the world and to religion and to our idea that we are the center of everything? If all of a sudden there are life beings, as we know them, that are far more advanced than we are, how does that create just enormous chaos throughout the world and our culture?
Yeah. Not a small question.
No, I know. Oh, by the way, you only have 1 minute, Steve.
Okay, well, yeah. Well, first of all, clearly I don't have the answer.
Yes.
I can have a speculation and opinion or a leaning. My leaning is, all of the horrible things that you talked about that could happen. I would lean towards that disclosure anyway. I based on an assumption that eventually that will come out, and I can't imagine a scenario where somehow it'll be a perfect time to do it. How's that? What does that look like? What's the perfect time to do it look
Right,
like?
right.
That will never arrive. I'm pretty convinced of that. I think all kinds of challenges could come to our social. I'll say this, for whatever reason, in my social media feeds, I have no idea why the algorithm's doing this now, because it never did it before. I get Carl Sagan videos nonstop. Like, just crazy. I don't know why. Is somebody promoting that right now? I don't know. Man was a genius. He's so wonderful to listen to. And I was just thinking, that's the kind of wisdom, the sort of the unifying. He did a lot of science, but then a lot of kind of unifying, very smart, very, very eloquent. And I was like, okay, there are smarter people than me, for sure, that hopefully would ponder a question like that. I suspect, though, that our knee jerk, as it was in 1947, I mean, the whole cover up, the whole notion of we're not going to share this information was well underway. I mean, they were happy to seal these records and just disappear them. The evidence of the crashed plane, the plane crashed in 1947, carrying slag. Yeah. We had the Army. I got the Army's final mission report from a archive in Alabama, and it's 67 pages, and it very clearly says the plane crashes, they fly a platoon down, they bring another intelligence officer, it takes a while to get him to the site, to find the top secret cargo that had been manifested into the navigator's kit, the slag. When that is recovered, the intelligence officer takes that top secret cargo away, and then they release the site to local law enforcement. And I always get asked, of course, where is it?
Yes.
And it's right next to the Ark of the Covenant, man. I'm sure of it. I always, it's in that warehouse at the end of Indiana Jones. So nobody knows. There's literally no record. The trail is cold with that report. Yeah. We know it was recovered. We know it was taken. There is, there's nothing. So very murky, but wonderful, wonderful story.
It is great. It's
I'm mad that it's forgotten. Yeah. You can tell.
I can tell, but it's in honor of Sparky, Steve. We need to keep this alive.
We do. We have an event every year, Midfest, that celebrates this. We just finished it. And this year's edition was all about Sparky.
Oh my God.
We even had a tournament, Sparky's Revenge, where Sparky got to fight the discs back.
Steve Edmitson, thanks so much.